Hi there. Welcome to the Goal Getter podcast. We are so glad that you are here. I'm Lindsay, the dreamer and visionary of the business.
And I'm Jordan, the brains of the business, meaning I do all the back end stuff or anything that Lindsay doesn't like doing.
We're a husband and wife duo who took a leap of faith several years ago to embark on this permanent makeup business journey together.
We both worked unsuccessful and unfulfilling jobs before, and now we've turned our business into a thriving six-figure business.
They say you're meant to lead those who were once in your shoes, so that's what we're doing, navigating kids, homeschooling, business, and life together.
But this podcast is about more than just business and permanent makeup. It's about personal growth. We're here to help you conquer your goals, both in your business and in life.
And remember, growth begins when you get outside of your comfort zone.
Does all that sound good? Awesome. Let's dive on in. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Goal Getter podcast. And here with me today is my lovely wife, Lindsay. I'm Jordan, as I'm sure all of you know, but today's a special episode. Today is an episode that we are going to get to talk about how our Florida location came to be, how we ended up landing on Sarasota, and it's going to be a little bit different. So normally kind of in our podcast, typical thing is like we kind of bounce back and forth. We kind of share on our own little information. I get to play a different role today, and I'm going to interview Lindsay today, and I'm just going to ask her some questions on how we got the idea to go down to Florida, how we landed on Sarasota, how we got the hookup, how we just saw God move in the whole situation, which is just absolutely crazy in and of itself. So with all of that said, let's just dive on in and welcome Lindsay.
Hey guys, what's up? Yeah, it's really funny because this episode is, we're going to be really transparent with you guys because this episode really involves a lot of our faith. And so we can't leave that part out of the story because we're not really people that believe in just good luck. We believe that we have prayed a lot about this situation and we've really seen God's hand move. So if you guys are not really into faith, I'm going to be honest with you. You might not love this episode, but we're going to be transparent because that's how we always are. And it's really honestly a miracle how this whole thing came to be. So even if you don't love faith, you should still tune in because it's going to be a pretty cool episode.
Yeah. So, okay, Lindsay, let's rewind the clock back. Give our listeners a little bit of insight. Like when was kind of like the first thought that kind of came into your head of like, hey, maybe we should open another location, and even go back even further and maybe even give a little bit more background. Like, was the first location we were thinking about Florida? Like, give us some insight into that and to even how you knew you wanted to start another location and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, this is a super loaded question because we actually have thought about several different locations at different times. So I'm going to have to think about where to start with that. That one definitely caught me off guard.
Dive in here. Sorry, I'm new to my interviewing skills. But dive in here and essentially just give us like the background. So like Florida, like when did you have the first thought like, okay, hey, let's dive into Florida?
So going back to your original question, honey, I first knew that I wanted to start a location like probably 2 to 3 years ago was when I was really starting to kind of have this idea of like, okay, could we like grow this thing into another location? Could we, gain more employees in another spot? But it was never the right time because about the time that I started to think about that, we had just had a baby. We had Zoe, and she's now 3 years old. So the timing is about spot on. It was about the time that I was on maternity leave and was not working. And I was starting to daydream about, going back to work, and then just thinking about what are we going to do after this and what more is there that we can do. So at one point, we had thought about Indianapolis. Like Carmel area is definitely really flourishing and is doing really well. Fishers is doing really well. And so, we were starting to kind of think about that. We had started to actually kind of put some feelers out in the Indianapolis area. And then I kind of started to think like, oh, maybe Florida, because we go there all the time and we love it. What might that look like? And then we were like, no, we're so crazy for even thinking about that, because we have 3 kids and, it's like, that's a lot. That's a lot for us to take on. That's a lot for us to drive or fly. What is it going to look like if we have our kids with us or we don't have our kids with us? That's just a really sticky detail. So then we went back to the Indianapolis idea, put some feelers out, and we actually got someone who said yes to us, but the schedule wasn't going to work out for us. But even rewinding a little bit more than that, talking about Indy, how many years ago was that we legit were almost signing a contract to go work in Indy?
So it was before Zoe. I don't know. So just for reference, guys, like all of our years get so messed up. Now that I feel like now that you don't have like college years, like freshman, junior, like it gets super messy with kids, and it's like, was that before this kid or was it after? So I'm going to say that it was probably like at least 3 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago.
Thinking about getting pregnant with Zoe. I don't think we had Zoe yet. So anyways, taking you back a little bit further, we actually were a day or so away from signing a contract with somebody, and it was also a very wild story because we were praying about opening up another location, and it was in Fishers, and we started praying, and then we randomly reached out to someone, or someone randomly reached out to us. I can't remember which order it was, but it was out of the blue, completely out of the middle of nowhere. Faith-wise, we aligned. Politically, we aligned. Like, we were both moms, entrepreneurs, and she had a very well-thriving salon business in the Fishers area. We went down and interviewed with them. We sat down and chatted with them because it's our own business. We weren't applying for a job, but we sat down. Everything went amazing. They had the amount of rooms we needed. They had the schedule we needed, and boom, 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 just like that, everything was like going so smooth. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we're going to open up a location in Fishers. This is wild. And then all of a sudden, the door completely slammed. What happened was the salon owner actually lost a lot of her booth renters out of the middle of nowhere, and they realized they couldn't afford to stay there anymore. And so they had to basically relocate their business to a smaller area. And then the smaller area that they were relocating to, they were going to actually allow us to still come. And so the plans were still on at that point. But then the contractor who was doing their build out for them was like, hey, if you build a room in the back for these people, like, you're going to lose like 8 feet on your floor where all the hair chairs are going to go. And she was like, Lindsay, we just can't do that. Like, there's not enough space for us to put a room in the back of the salon. And we were like, oh my goodness, like, how does God open up all these doors and answer all these prayers and then all of a sudden slam the door? So it took me a really long time to even be able to travel through Fishers, because like I said, we go to Florida a lot and we travel through Fishers every single time. We actually just passed Fishers because we're driving home from Florida right now. But it took me a really long time to drive through Fishers and not get emotional, because I was so excited about that small dream that didn't work out.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's safe to say we were both pretty devastated, because when you get like a deal or something like that and you're that close to like finalizing it, it starts to become more of a reality rather than dream, and you start to like think practically, like Lindsay said, like, okay, how are we gonna, like, what are we gonna do for kids, and like, where are we gonna stay when we go down there, and like, how are we gonna get clients, and like, you start to practically lay out some steps. And then when the door closes abruptly like that, we obviously were devastated, but we totally understood like where the salon we were going to be renting from was coming from, and how it just didn't make sense for them logistically. But so now fast forwarding then a little bit more to now like Florida. So why Florida? Like, give our listeners like some insight into like how we landed on Florida, specifically the Sarasota area. And even in like its infancy stages, like how did you start reaching out to people? Yeah, so also a very loaded question, but Florida, we've had so many people say, why Florida? Why so far away? Like, you really are crazy. Like, this is a part of your journey that is just so far away, and like, how are you going to do this, and how often, and all those things. And we'll get to all those things in a little bit, but Florida has always held a special place, and Jordan and I
both in our hearts. And ironically, like, we both grew up going to Florida and traveling to Florida and driving to Florida with our family. And some of my best memories are driving all the way to Florida from Indiana in the car with my sister and my parents. And so Florida has always been really special to us. And truthfully, like, almost every single vacation, like 95% of our vacations, are to Florida. And so the last several years when we go on vacation, it's gotten harder and harder and harder for us to leave. And so that's kind of when I started thinking, like, maybe this is something that we're supposed to, like, think about more. Maybe God is, like, tugging on my heart a little bit. And so I kind of started to lean into that and tune into what I feel like the Lord was speaking over my life at that point. But some other things that kind of played a role. I talk about my sister every now and then, but she's a little bit older than me, and we are really good friends. But it's been very hard with her and her life and her journey because her husband is a pastor. And so they have been all around and lived in several different places as she has just like I said, gone on her journey with the Lord and where the Lord has led her and her husband. And they were in Lafayette for a while, and her husband went to Purdue University. And then God called them to plant a church. And so we didn't really know where they were going to plant a church for a really long time, but they were thinking it was going to be Southern Indiana. And we're like, okay, we can do that. That's not very far. She has 4 kids, so 3 boys and 1 girl. So my nephews and my niece, obviously there's more of a tighter bond and a connection there with them too. And so they actually were called to and planted a church in Georgia, in Athens, Georgia. UGA, right? Yep. Right, Bulldogs. Okay. So they're really close to the university, but God called them there. And so for quite some time, I was really crushed because that's 12 hours away from our house. Not necessarily just something that you can do in a day and then turn around and come back. Her kids are in school. Our kids we both homeschool our kids. They go to hybrid homeschool programs, but nonetheless, they still have obligations and things that they have to do with school. And so I went through a grieving phase for quite some time. If you're listening to this, Brittany, you probably didn't know that, but even still to this day, it's really hard to be away from the people that you love the most. And so Georgia is closer to Florida. So whenever we go to Florida, we always stop by and see my sister. Even though it's out of the way, we always stop by and see, because it's very difficult to go all the way down there and not see, like I said, the people that you love the most. So that started to kind of, like I said, plant an idea in my head. And then also, I don't know, about a year ago, maybe less than that now, my parents bought a mobile home down in Florida, and kind of like the Bradenton area. And so I'm like, great, now my parents are going to be down south more too. And so I'm like, our kids are super close to my parents. And so my kids don't do well without seeing my parents for extended period of times. And my parents are talking about going to Florida and becoming snowbirds at some point. And so I'm like, wow, we're not going to have a ton of help. Jordan's parents are up here. They are very helpful and amazing. And our kids are really close with them. But my parents are literally right around the corner from us. So they're kind of like our big help, I would say. And so all that to say, they're going to be down there more. My sister's down in Georgia. We're going to be down there visiting. We're going to be taking time off. We're not making money at this point with where our business is if we are not servicing clients. So that's kind of where Florida came in to play. I just started noticing that my family was going further and further south. And again, we love Florida. So that is the answer to your why Florida.
Yeah. So for our listeners as well, like practically speaking, then like part 2 of that question, like what was your process like for starting to find places of where would be a possible landing spot, or how you reached out to these places, that kind of thing? Walk me through a little bit of something practical. Maybe one of our listeners is thinking like, oh, hey, I'm ready to start my own business and start booth renting, or I'm looking for a place that I need to land. Like, what was your process, Lindsay, in reaching out to places?
Yeah, it was really just practical thinking, which I'm normally not a very practical thinker. I'm very much a dreamer. I'm a visionary. I'm like, Jordan, I want to go to the moon. And he's like, how are you going to get there? I'm like, I have no idea, but I'm going to get there. So that's where my brain typically goes. But it was very much practical thinking. I was really, now that you say that, I'm very proud of myself. But where Sarasota kind of came in is it's near my parents down there. So like I said, my parents bought a mobile home down there. I knew that if we were going to do this, we had to rely on someone to help us because we have 3 children. And at this moment, they are 7, 5, and 3. So not exactly ages where they can just babysit themselves. And so we knew that we had to find a place to stay where we could stay for free or stay super cheap while we are building our clientele. And really try to not spend as much money as possible because there's more money going out the door at this point than coming in. And so you do have to be very practical in terms of spending money. So really that's kind of like where Sarasota came into play. And truthfully, we really weren't even looking at Sarasota. We were really looking more at like the Lakewood Ranch area, which is near Sarasota. But that is not kind of what played out. And like I said, we'll get to that in a little bit. But practically speaking, that is where just wanting to stay near that area within reasonable driving distance so that we could get to and from work. And if someone had our kids, they wouldn't have them for like hours on end when we were done working because of the drive. So at this point, if you've been listening to the last couple of like us talking, or if you're a part of any communities that we're a part of, you've heard us say that like this journey so far, we're in April right now. Like I said, we're literally driving back from our first month opening our business down in Sarasota. And we've been in the car for 20 hours already. We have an hour and a half to go, but this is fresh for us. This is brand new. It's still wild. I can't believe that we just spent a week in Florida and we hustled our butts off. We didn't just kick our feet up, but we've been served. I should say I've been served a big piece of humble pie. Because from the outside looking in, everyone's like, oh my gosh, you're building a second business. Like you are opening up a second location. Lindsay, Jordan, this is massive. This is huge. This is like crazy success. And it's like, hold on, let's rewind a little bit. Yes, this is phenomenal. This is amazing. We wouldn't be able to open up a second location if we didn't have the reputation that we have. But we have no clients. So we have to rebuild this thing from the beginning, from the ground up, and figure out how are we doing this. And so there's no success in any of this, minus the fact that we have been asked and also accepted into a very well-known business to render these services to their clients and, the Sarasota area and surrounding areas. So, going into figuring out like, how are we going to find a place to even work inside of was like, okay, let's start researching businesses that complement ours, right? We were talking about medical spas or like other some kind of a salon or like a lash studio or something that would complement essentially like permanent makeup, that we would be able to share clients with this business back and forth. And I think it's also like important to know, like Lindsay was saying, like we're literally starting this thing all the way over, but it's also like starting completely over where like we don't really know anyone. Like it's not like we grew up in Florida and it's like, oh yeah, hey, like, I have, my friends and family like around me to kind of like reach out to and like make contacts with. So we're literally like scratching our heads over here sometimes like, okay, like who can we reach out to that like maybe know some more people or like get us connected, or like how can we get in front of more people and those kinds of things. But Lindsay, also one of the things I want our listeners to know is we had like a lot of friction, I think, when we first reached out to places to try and find a place to booth rent, because we knew we wanted to booth rent. We knew we didn't want to be employees, just with where we're at in our business. But dive into some of that, how we kind of at first honestly kind of fell on its face, but just how you push through that, how we ended up making it to the other side, and the challenges that we had initially with it. Yeah, and I'm gonna literally give you my entire brain and thought process here, like thought for thought, because I want you guys to know what I was thinking, why I was thinking it, and, kind of the way that we went about it too. So my first initial thought was, we have to find a reputable business that makes money. They generate revenue because that means that they have clients, that they have a well and good established clientele. They need to have good business reviews because business reviews tell all. You might have a very, very wildly successful business and do really well, but if you don't have client testimonials, you're missing out on a lot of people coming into your business because people read reviews. So I knew that I needed to look for those specific things, and I needed to look for something that complemented our business. So medical spas, again, salons, nail places, lash places, things like that, where it could go hand in hand. And actually, there are studies that have been done that show the correlation between medical spas and permanent makeup artists and business, how well they share clientele or how high the shared clientele number is. And it's extremely high. So I knew that when we presented to these business that we had to really kind of show them statistics and, talk about, how it was going to benefit them. Because if you're realistically, we're looking at this from the outside looking in, it looks very weird when you're reaching out to a business and saying like, hey, I need your clientele. Can you help? Thanks. Like, it's just, it has to be thought over so much more than that. And so initially I'll tell you kind of what we said to these businesses, but initially I was Googling all of these business names and writing everybody down. I literally started a Excel spreadsheet. When have you ever seen me use an Excel spreadsheet? Yeah, never. So I was literally like, how do I use this? And he was showing me all the different things and things like that. So I started an Excel document and I literally was putting all these business names in. And I just told Jordan, I was like, there's this one place that really sticks out to me, and probably because they have a ton of locations nationwide, and they just really stand out to me. They look like they're really well established. They have great reviews. They have several locations. One of them being in northern Indiana and southern Michigan. And so I'm like, wow, that location is really close to us. So I actually reached out to this place exclusively, and I was like, hi, so-and-so. My name is Lindsay. My husband and I own and operate a very well-established permanent makeup business in northern Indiana. We were the first to bring it to our area. We've serviced thousands and thousands of clients. We have hundreds of 5-star reviews across many platforms, and basically just introduced ourselves and told them our accomplishments and told them what we did and how we have really loyal clients, and people who really love us and have enjoyed our services. And so, it was obviously like several paragraphs long and was very detailed and things like that. And, they ended up putting me in touch with the owner's assistant, and who was very sweet. And she was like, unfortunately, we're not looking for anybody at this time, but thank you so much for reaching out. So that was that. They said no. I was bummed. I'm like, man, I thought that was going to be way easier. I thought we'd be a shoo-in. But again, not everything goes according to plan. So I then looked at you, and do you remember what I said to you at that point?
No, I was also going to chime in just saying, like, we also reached out to a number of other places that also said no.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So
no, I don't remember what you said.
So it's all been a whirlwind. But several months went by. I don't know, 5 or 6 months, just because the hustle and bustle of owning a business, different things pop up, people come and go, things like that. And so I started to say to Jordan, like, hey, I really think that we need to continue reaching out to other businesses, but we might need to think about this a little bit differently. So I basically sent that same blurb to every single person that we sent it to. And with that being said, of course, I changed all the names. I changed all the details. I actually did research on each of these businesses, so I knew who I should address and who would be like the head honcho, essentially. And literally got no responses. Like, I'm not even joking. We probably reached out to 15 different places. Nobody responded to me. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, this is not going to be easy. And so then I looked at Jordan and I said, I think I'm going to have to call these places. I was really hoping that I could just get away with, shooting an email, But unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to actually like cold call these places, which I've never had to do that in my entire life, ever. Yeah. And so I cold called all these places, all the places that I emailed, and I was really actually quite stunned at some of the responses that I received. Some of the people were extremely rude that I spoke to, and like some of them were like, oh, we'll pass you off to so-and-so, and they never did. And then some people like just never even got back to us. And so once again, it was kind of like this, I don't know, again, just like a slice of humble pie, because I really resistance, so much resistance. And I'm like, okay, I thought this was going to be easy. I thought this was not going to be difficult. We're well established, but these people don't know that. So how do we make them know that? How do we stand out above maybe other people that might be reaching out to them? And so I feel like at that point, I kind of just stopped doing the whole process for several months. I think we reached out to these places like last September, and then worked for a couple more months. And then in December, we went to visit family.
Well, we went down there in December, and we actually drove around to some places to like actually see like, okay, hey, where are these places at that we're actually like reaching out to? Like, what's the surrounding area look like? Like, what does the building look like? How professional does it look? All those kinds of things. Yeah,
and actually we drove around to a lot of these places that we reach out to, and we actually were praying over these places, and you know, like asking God to like bless their business, and also like, where are we supposed to be?
Yeah, because up until this point, we kind of felt like, okay, hey God, like you opened the door for us to like have this thought to essentially trust you that you would provide a place down there, because that's where we feel like you're calling us, and yet like every single place that we were reaching out to was like, nope, like, sorry, nope, not right now. Like, and it was totally like, okay, well, like, why do we have this thought, and like, why do we have this desire to do this if it's not? So we honestly, like at that point, I kind of started to become like okay with like, okay, God, like I think you closed the door. Like I think we tried to do it, and maybe it was our own desire and it wasn't yours, and that's okay. And I almost started to just become okay with like the no, that it wasn't going to work out.
And that's the difference between Jordan and I. He's totally fine with that, and I wasn't, because I still had this like lurking desire that I wanted to start something down there. I just knew that it wasn't going to happen yet. And so like Jordan was kind of talking about, like really heavy doubt started to set in, and it was really emotional to begin with. But like I said, a couple of months went by. We ended up being down in Florida around Christmas time, because we went to visit my sister and her family, and then we actually just kept going south, and we actually went on vacation with our kids, and we really just had some great family time. And so I said to Jordan, I'm like, I think that I need to reach out to the original place, the number one place that I reached out to about a year ago. Like, I feel like I should reach out to them again and just like see how things are going. I don't know why I had that feeling, but I just did. And he's like, well, we've got nothing to lose, you might as well reach out to him. So I reached out to him again. I was like, hey, so-and-so, how was your Christmas? I hope everything went really well. Like, you had great family time, and just trying to be as personable as possible. Because even if the door was still no, I was still okay with that. But I want people to know that we like are caring people, and we're not just all business. And so trying to build a relationship and establish that. And so basically the place came back again and said, no, we're still not looking for anybody, but we're probably going to open up a location in Key West. So way further south. We had honestly no desire to open up anything in Key West, because it's just so stinking far down there, and the logistics to that would be even more challenging. And so we were like, no problem, like, thank you so much for getting back to us, yada yada. And then after that, we went to a beach called Coquina Beach, and we went there with my kiddos, and actually my parents were down there as well. And I don't know if you guys have ever had this happen to you, but if you have kids, or even if you don't, sometimes when you're in a moment that feels so like still and so special, like time literally stops. And so I had one of those moments on the beach where we were walking along the beach and our kids were running and jumping in the water and playing in the sand. And I was looking at my husband and thinking like, wow, I'm so blessed. Like, I'm so blessed to have 3 amazing, healthy kids, an amazing husband that is not only so supportive of our business, he's obviously joined me in business, an amazing father and an amazing husband too. Like, I have my parents here with me. They're both really, doing well and healthy, and we've got that help. And so I just kind of had that moment where I was like, wow, God, you are so good. Like, I need nothing more. Like, you have given me so many things. You have blessed me beyond what I can even comprehend. And I think sometimes we get so lost as entrepreneurs. We get so lost in entrepreneurship where it's like we can't see past our own 2 feet, and we can't see that we are so blessed to have what we have. And I just had that moment where I totally feel like God's stopped time for me so that I could have this moment with him and have appreciation and a grateful heart and thankfulness. And I remember having my sunglasses on and thinking to myself, I'm so glad I have sunglasses on right now, because I'm literally bawling on the beach. And I just remember saying, and I'm literally going to tell you my prayer that I had at that moment with God, because I want to really let you in on that. But it was literally a prayer that was like, okay, God, like you've placed this desire in my heart. The last time you placed a desire that was this strong in my heart was when I wanted Jordan to join me in business. And so I knew the desire was planted there for a reason. And so I just said, okay, God, like, if you've closed all of these doors, it's very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, it's very evident that you're closing these doors. So I'm literally letting go of this. I'm literally giving you the reins. I'm wanting you to take this desire out of my heart if you don't want us down in Florida. So like, if you're not wanting us down here, then take the desire away and continue just to close doors so that I don't really even think about it anymore, because then I would know that you want us to stay where we're at. And if my heart so desires being in Florida for any other reason than to love people and to serve people and to build relationships with people, then take this desire away from my heart too, because I don't want it. I don't want to grow in Florida just to make more money and to become wealthier and to have possessions and worldly things. I don't want that. Yes, all those things are good and great, but your heart has to be in the right place. So my heart doesn't desire that. I know I don't need those things because I have a relationship with Jesus. And so I just told God, I'm like, I don't want that. Like, I want my heart to be pure. I want my heart to be in the right place. I want to love people and serve people. And I just kind of felt this, I don't know, like this weird release, I guess, that once I like let that go and gave it to God, it was almost like I was like, just, I don't know, I wasn't in control of it anymore. And I never was in the first place. But as an entrepreneur, you want to be in control of everything. And as humans, we like to be in control of just about everything.
Yeah, I think it's important to note, like you were saying, so many times as entrepreneurs, we get stuck so deep in the weeds, right? Because we wear so many different hats. We're constantly trying to essentially market and sell and like answer the leads coming in, and then actually provide the service, and then like follow-ups and like all the things, right? That like, I think it's important to note that like it's so easy to get caught up in the hustle and bustle of all the business and stuff that sometimes we forget to sit back and look and just think and like, wow, look at how far we've come. And I know for me, like probably within the last year or two, and I think I've looked at you several times and said this sometimes, is like just sitting down like, wow, like look where we're at. Like we have goals and we have aspirations to do different things with our business, and also just like personal goals and things with our kids and different stuff like that. But so many times, I think now, being in business with Lindsay. I've been in business with Lindsay for 5 years, and Lindsay running the business for almost 8 years now. It's been so many times where it's been like, now I feel like we sit back and it's like, wow, like, God, look what you've done. Like, look at how far we've come. And it's
like, how can we ask for more?
Right. It's like, it's extremely humbling to do so, but at the same time, it's really, really cool to like kind of reflect back, because then I think it also gives you a better and a clearer picture on where exactly you're going.
Yeah. So back to the story here where I was on Coquina Beach and time stood still, and I just had a moment with God, and I was just like, do with this whatever you want. So if you want us to stay in Indiana, make it evident, make it clear. If you want us to be in Florida, make it clear, make it evident. But whatever you want is what I want. Because if you have faith, even if you don't, but even if you have faith, you know that when you try to do things in your timing and in your way, and it is not God's way, every door closes. There's so many obstacles. There's so many hurdles. Everything feels so hard. And so if you're going through a season like that right now where everything feels so hard, God might be trying to teach you something. So I just encourage you to try to sit down and sit still and be quiet and listen to what the Holy Spirit might be putting on your heart and on your mind, because I totally felt like we are in a moment where God is trying to teach us something, and he's trying to get our attention, and we just need to shut up and listen, because we're not very good at that a lot of times. And so, all right, so the next thing, literally 2 days later,
after that moment you had.
Yeah. After that moment I had on Coquina Beach, 2 days later, we were still in Florida, but we were getting ready to go home. I got an email, like I said, after this place already reached out to us and told us, no, sorry, they don't have any openings for us. Literally 2 days later, after I had that prayer in that moment with God, I received an email. All the email said, like word for word, you're getting ready to receive an email if you haven't already. That's literally all the email said. And I read that to Jordan. He's like, that's all it says? I'm like, that's all it says. And so now I'm like on pins and needles. However, I wasn't getting my hopes up, because remember, if you remember back to the story, this place told us that they were maybe opening up a location in Key West. And so that was what was going through my mind at that point, which obviously we weren't interested in that. So I was not going to allow myself to get really excited, and because I just didn't know what it involved. So then 2 days after that, we're home now. We like just got home. We received an email from a manager at another location to this business that said, so-and-so and I, which I'm not going to say the name, but so-and-so and I have been talking about you and your husband, Jordan, and how you guys are wanting to open up a second location here in Sarasota, Florida. We'd love to have a conversation with you. And the person who was the so-and-so, that name was the owner of all of these locations of the medical spa that we were talking to. And so when I received that email, what did I do? What, do you remember? Jaw dropped, and I started crying, because I was like, oh my gosh, God. Like literally 4 days prior to that, it was a complete no. Like all the doors were closed. Nothing was happening at that point. And I firmly believe that when I had my moment with the Lord and I just gave up control, that God saw my heart and where my heart was at. And so to tell you guys something really cool about this whole story, that original place that I reached out to a year ago was the place that told us yes. So the number one place that I reached out to, the number one place that I desired to be within, because they had several locations, they were very well established, they had great clientele, they were reputable, they had great reviews. They literally checked off every single box that I had. And so that same place is where we are currently working out of now, which is called the Laser Lounge Spa. and they have over 20 locations US wide, and they're a phenomenal business. They're a phenomenal company with really amazing people and staff that work in it. And so after we got that email from them, that very next night, we jumped on a 3-way call with that manager, with the owner, and then with Jordan and I. And it took several weeks for us to negotiate everything, but everything was so smooth. Everything was so flawless.
It's just one of those moments where that God's hand was in it, because everything was just like so smooth from that point on. Like as soon as it was like, hey, like we want you guys to rent from us, it just like everything like clicked. Like it just there was like almost like all the resistance that was there before just like totally just evaporated and was gone. And all of a sudden it was just like we asked for a couple things, they asked for a couple, and we were just like, yep, like those are fine. And they like answered all of ours with yeses, and they were good with our terms. And after a few emails back and forth, like it was pretty much a done deal.
Yeah. So that's kind of the story. That's kind of where we're at with everything. And right now we are just in the process of trying to figure out how to grow, how to get our name out there, and how to service clients in Florida, and how to serve them and love them and build a relationship with them. And yeah, that's how the story went.
Yeah. Also, like if you guys are tuning into this and you're listening, and you're like going to the new website, hopefully it's up by now. Hopefully I have it all like set up by the time this posts. But if links are not working on the new website, it's been an absolute just madness to try and like rebrand everything after essentially like having Michiana microblading for almost 8 years, and now switching to Bowerman Artistry and having to redo the whole website, redo all the links. And then I also switched programs that we host our website with. So that's also like a whole new learning curve. So just be patient with us is all I'm saying. So just hang with us, hang tight. It's going to be so much better. We have so many new things that the new website can do. We also split off our training side from our service side. So there's 2 different websites now. So just a better way to serve you guys, and a better way to be able to get our name out with some different stuff. So with that said, I think that's all we had for our story for Florida. So for some of you that are like, how did this happen? Or like, how did you get there? Or like, how did all that? Hopefully that answered some questions for you guys. I just
thought of one more thing. A lot of people have been asking, like, how are you doing this? That's one thing that we forgot to touch on. When are you going down? What does this look like for you guys? So right now, as it stands, this could change next month, but as it stands, we are going down for 1 week out of the month, and it's typically the last week of the month. So we're trying to keep everything really consistent, going down at the same time every single month. And we're typically going for about a week, but that might change as our kids get back into school later on this fall. And so that's what we're doing. And as far as our kids go, we have no idea still. It's going to be a month-by-month thing. Yeah, so we still don't have that detail worked out, but either way, it'll work out because we have a great support system and lots of help. So, yeah, I think that was all.
And if you're our clients up north, we're not leaving you. We're not totally just taking off and heading to Florida. So don't worry. There's still going to be appointment times. We're still taking new clients at both locations. It's nothing changes there. Just some of the availability will just be a little bit, maybe a little bit further out.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you later.
Take care.